Ambrosia Sky is the first game developed and published by Soft Rains, a team of creatives from across the industry who have worked on games like Fallout 4, Valorant, Grindstone, and the indie game A Mortician's Tale. In Ambrosia Sky, you play as Dahlia, a woman who works as a scarab, basically a futuristic space coroner. She collects the DNA of dead people across a series of interstellar vessels for a bunch of scientists to help find the key to immortality in what they call the Ambrosia Project. Reaching these bodies isn't easy, though. You'll have to maneuver and wash your way through networks of fungi, big and small, using nothing but a laser tether and a chemical sprayer. And it plays a lot like an immersive sim, with all the email reading and door unlocking gameplay that genre label tends to imply. Think Power Wash Simulator meets System Shock. I think what drew me into Ambrosia Sky so much, though, wasn't just its therapeutic cleaning, beautiful prose, or stunningly grimy art style. It was instead how it explores death in a way that reconsiders the tragedy of an ending, whether that's of a person or a place, or a future that could have been, as something sublime. A few weeks ago, I had the chance to sit down with some of the team at Soft Rains, including the game's creative director Joel Sturgis, narrative director Caitlin Tremblay, and technical director Jules Glegg, to discuss how they brought the game to life and crafted this story around death.
There's so much about death, right? Like, it's so multifaceted. There's so much we don't know. There's so many emotions about it, and there's so many different ways we react to it. And like that variation within it, I think is what's really like artistically compelling to me. And I think is something that like also like the team responded to, right? Like giving a way to talk about death that isn't just one avenue, right? That like allows us to explore it in all the many different ways it inhabits our psyches, our emotions. Like, I'm always surprised when people don't think about death as much as I do. And it's like, oh, well, maybe I should get that looked at. The death rituals, I think, were one of the earliest parts of the game too, right? And like exactly how they were going to manifest, we weren't always sure. But Dahlia being this character who comes into this place after disaster has struck and is just there in this act of care, I think was really important, right? And like one of those ways in which that care got embodied is obviously like through cleaning and taking care of the environment, but also finding people who have died here and being able to take care of them and look after them in the way that she could, which is often, you know, doing these death rituals and like being able to honor people.
As I mentioned, a lot of what you're doing in Ambrosia Sky is wiping away this fungus that's blocking your path. Sometimes this fungus seems to have a mind of its own, with the undulating clumps that appear like intestines seeming particularly alive. But others too, like the sharp electrical fungus that can shock you if you're not careful, seemed out to get me, like I was encroaching on their space. At first, cleaning these fungi off of the surfaces of the various vessels you enter felt like removing a nuisance, but eventually I was entranced by cleaning them. I had to get rid of them. I felt compelled to, and in doing so, I was able to see more of these places, and by proxy, more of the lives of the people who died there. I felt like a futuristic death cleaner, an occupation that the team was pulling from to create the scarabs.
Yeah, the death cleaner job, like real world job, was like one-to-one, like one of the first things we said when we started thinking about cleaning, like job sims, like interesting job roles. Yeah, 100% that was a big inspiration for her and for the foundation of the scarabs, right? Like, because there is so much like community care in that kind of job, right? Like coming into a space, there's so much intimacy too, and like trust you have to have, and just like, it's just a really interesting psychological space, as well as like a community space as well, so.
But I mean, even the death cleaner job, like at the outset, there was like, you know, like I remember thinking about it in terms of like, you know, hazardous material handling type of cleanup, and you know, we talk conversations about like the sort of Japanese apartment death cleaners. So there's like a lot of different dimensions of how like individuals and communities and organizations like assemble around death and dying. It's been interesting to discover more about how we, like as a species and as like a global culture, deal with that, and then to find different ways for that to be like reflected in the scarabs and reflected in Dahlia, which, you know, is based in a lot, but is also fantastical.
Yeah, and I use the word community a lot when I think about this or when I talk about this, because it really is like how people around us respond to death. And like in Ambrosia Sky, like how the different people in the cluster respond to the incoming crisis, how they tried to help each other, how they didn't try to help each other, like all of the different ways in which the people of this world responded to the crisis, to the disaster that was happening. So it's not just Dahlia's feelings on death and how she's helping, lay people to rest after the fact. It's also about how people in the moment tried to help each other or didn't try to help each other, and how they succeeded, how they failed, and like what that looked like. And I didn't realize this until like, I don't know, a month ago, but like I think a lot of this was informed too by like living through and watching the pandemic and lockdown and how people took care of each other and showed up for each other, and like those little small moments of life amidst this kind of horrible disaster that we all lived through, right? And I think that shaped a lot of this as well at the same time. So.
Once you've made it past the various fungal networks, cleared away the hazards, and become familiar with these labyrinthian spaces, you'll be able to reach the target of your mission. Sometimes these tasks are as seemingly simple as collecting big seeds or tracking down a target that may no longer be there, but the most narratively satisfying ones are when you finally reach the body of someone who has signed up for the Ambrosia Project, so you can collect their DNA in a breathtakingly cinematic process that's referred to as bioremediation.
There were like a number of things early on that we were like, this is definitely a pillar of the game. This is like for sure an important part of the game, that we ended up like, they got 2 or 3 at-bats through prototyping. We're like, regrettably, we're gonna move away from that thing. And the death rituals were, I feel like it was kind of like the 3rd at-bat for death rituals. So like we had tried them out a couple of different ways that like, I don't know, this feels like weird or grotesque, or we're not really sure how we're gonna make this like fun. And we ended up hitting on the way that we're presenting them in the game that you can actually play, which in a lot of ways is like a lighter touch, but just felt like we'd like hit like the right tone through like the presentation and like, how you interact with them and like, yeah.
Yeah, I think they're really special moments. And they're also like, they're one of those moments too that I really like because it's such a confluence of like so many different members of our team really bringing them to light, right? Like the audio, the art, the experience of getting up to and finding the body, the writing, all of it, right? Like I just feel like they've really shine a light on the strengths of our team, and they're this really beautiful moment where kind of everybody worked on them. So.
I want to say that about the death rituals is something I found being a programmer. I'm going to spend more time finessing the sim behaviors than the exact animations for the death rituals and everything, but we've talked all through development about space is dangerous and death in space is extremely dangerous, but our game is not hard sci-fi, right? Like that we're not dealing with fluid levels in coolant tanks and all that like really, really hard resource management, but still the death ritual itself has to reinforce like you're there for a reason. Like the death is bad. It needs cleaning up or the space is not going to be usable.
Yeah.
As much as Ambrosia Sky is about mourning people and considering the ways in which they live on, both literally as part of the Ambrosia Project and figuratively in our memories, I did appreciate how much of that same dignity was offered to the places you move through. These were people's homes and workplaces where they fell in love and out of love, pranked each other and grew up. Communities formed within these places, and they died in these places. For Dahlia in particular, this isn't just a mission where she's poking around someone else's tomb. This used to be her home. She grew up in this fungus farming colony, the cluster as it's called, and she knew these people. She'd walked these halls. Returning home to a place and a people that are no more is incredibly somber, even if the view out of your window is the beautiful celestial body we call Saturn.
We talked a lot about where it should be set. Should it be a full brand new secondary world? Should it be someplace out of Sol System? Should it be in Sol System? I think Saturn we picked for a couple of reasons. I think its proximity to Earth gave a familiarity that we could play with. And so like, I think like having some bones of, oh, I know this, I understand this, to then get weird from is really helpful. And then I also think there's just like, Saturn's also just beautiful. And like Saturn is so striking and it creates such a beautiful vista, and there's so much weirdness in Saturn, right? Like
it rains diamonds,
like the colors, like it's just also just like, it's just straight up beautiful. And I think it's all of these things that just kind of made Saturn such a like, once we got there, we're like, obviously it has to be Saturn.
Yeah, I mean, it's the iconic planet of our solar system, you know. I don't know if is that going to be controversial? I don't know.
I mean, like, I have a solar system tattoo, and it's literally the only one that's different.
Yeah. Yeah. And, you know, it also like getting into something like the world building and this, you know, because a lot of the premise of the game also relies on the idea that like we discovered this fungus at this place, and that was like a key to being able to have like sustainable off-world living. And so we have this concept that it was super instrumental to expansion off-planet for humanity. And then like humanity basically, you know, through whatever propulsion technology, through alternative food sources, is basically able to leapfrog this like hugely important way station. So Dahlia's generation in this place is a little bit more of like a bygone era of this like gilded age of like sort of like frontierism. And that like is suffused throughout a lot of like Dahlia's personality, about like the just generational characters that you'll interact with and backstory.
Yeah, we refer to it a lot as like an abandoned truck stop, right? Like the idea was that when humanity was first exploring outer space, you would have had to go past Saturn a lot, right? So it could feed these expansion protocols. So it's basically like a truck stop where the highway no longer goes past it anymore, and like what kind of culture that creates. I think it's interesting. As I was listening to you talk, I was thinking about like, oh yeah, it's also this other kind of like decay, right? Like taking this beautiful idea of Saturn and like making it this kind of like abandoned truck stop also. And I think this probably does come from like coming from a factory town that's gone through its own like economic ups and downs, and like the people there are still so vibrant and alive, and like the circumstances around them don't necessarily dictate that experience of life. And so like still trying to, even within this like more kind of like rundown version of the cluster, still show people being alive and loving each other and vibrant and fighting each other and having petty tensions and all this kind of stuff. Yeah.
The way I approach level design is I do try to really think of like what function the space would have served in the world before, and then thinking about like who would have inhabited it, what has happened, you know, like what happened 10 minutes before the player arrived, what happened 10 years before the player arrived, and all that. So like Gerald being like a farmer in that space came from knowing we're going to build like a farm space. And then Gerald in turn then influences the space itself, right? So like the way that like the secret passages, like there's a sort of a very put upon IT guy who Gerald is like making, you know, you read the terminals and all that, right? And so like, I know where in that space is the IT guy's office, and like the secret vent that connects things is like behind his chair. So like the, you know, and Dahlia references being there when it's a kid. So like in my mind, I imagine like Dahlia like tricking the IT guy, maybe Gerald distracting him and her sneaking into the vents to do all this stuff. And like, they're just, I don't know, like they're interwoven and they form each other. And like, if you're just building like a lava level and then shoving a character onto it, I think you're just struggle to ever get it, that kind of cohesion.
And the level's kind of like an oil rig, right? Like it's, people live there, but it's also a work site. They're just up in each other's business. And I feel like you can really see that as you move through the space.
It's funny because I often forget this until I think about the early days, is like so much of Dahlia's role in the world is standing close to something that is repulsive or scary to other people, like with death and, you know, and the ickiness of dealing with bodies, and just like the way we all avert our eyes from death writ large. And there's like a parallel that I think we saw of like mushrooms and decomposition and decay is also something that people tend to find revolting, and is actually just like perfectly natural part of life. And so it's like, if we're sort of exploring this sort of death positivity through the character's role, then also having like the place that she grew up and the mushrooms that grew there, and like fungus as like the way that humanity was able to find sustainable life off planet. Like we really, I don't know. I mean, I felt quite charmed at the time by like being able to sort of like turn those two things on their head at the same time in a way that felt like really synchronous. It's been interesting, like over the course of working on the project, people have lives, right? And like people on our team have gone through developments in their life where like the meaning of the game has like taken on like a new dimension or a turn, and we've had a few moments where people have had opportunities to like reflect that into the work, which is I think one of the nice things about being a small team. But it's also one of those things too, is like when we bring this out into the world, how do people respond to it? Like like I've had some interactions with folks who have played the game and experienced it, and then like I, in sort of like talking about it, debriefing after, like learned some very personal things about that person in their life, because like it is such a universal experience, you know, that I think like the response to it is extremely like authentic, like depending on what you've dealt with in your life, what life stage you're at, like, you know, what you have and haven't thought of. So I don't know, like one of my hopes for this game is that it encourages people to confront or think, you know, differently about death. And I think the fact that the game is more than just that helps as well, right? Because like you can come to the game for like a lot of different things, but like this is sort of like a heartbeat. This is like a through line that like, you know, you'll end up touching one way or another.
Act 1 of Ambrosia Sky is available now on Steam and the Epic Games Store for $15, with Acts 2 and 3 planned to launch next year, though the plan for when and for how much is still up in the air. The team at Soft Reigns are trying to make something strange and beautiful, and that can often mean taking risks. Whether or not that will pay off remains uncertain, but what I can say with confidence is that this first act was something special, and I'm looking forward to what comes next in Ambrosia Sky. Thank you again to Joel, Kate, and Jules for taking the time to share some of their process, and thank you for watching. All of our work at NoClip2 is paid for by our patrons over at patreon.com/NoClip2. And if you sign up now, you can get access to loads of extras, including podcasts, long-form gameplay videos, and behind-the-scenes content. Thank you so much for your support, be kind to one another, and take care.